This is Film Don't Lie from UGAsports.com. I'm Dayne Young. That's Brent Rollins. We're doing a Football 101 series. Some of the things that the Georgia Bulldogs do that you need to be able to recognize. We're focusing on the running game. And Brent, this particular section of the running game, the inside zone, is something that is in the South. We'll call this the bread and butter of Georgia's running game. A lot of things deviate off of this. This happens, and then other things can happen.
Very much so. And I think the bread and butter is probably a good term for it because, in essence, this has been Georgia's most used run blocking scheme and or run plays for quite a while and quite some. And really most of offensive football now has got to a zone world in terms of from a teaching offensive line standpoint, things of that nature. But much, Cole Kublik again in the Mississippi State game talked about how Georgia, gap versus zone schemes, asked a question and pointed some things out. This is the core play of the zone run blocking scheme. There's variations of it. The old school, or not necessarily old school, but the Mike Shanahan, Terrell Davis, Alex Gibbs, NFL outside zone stretch play, Peyton Manning, Edgerrin James, this is the inside version of it. And always seeing offensive linemen move in unison, especially from a footwork standpoint, is kind of the hallmark. And when you think about sort of why you do it, it's much like the old school isolation play, fullback lead was out of the I formation, was just the core to everything that was done. Play action was done off of that thing. Everything was done off of that. This is the core for what Georgia does. It allows all sorts of things, play action, RPO, QB run game. And I think that's when you see why is it used so much, it's that big key there. One is it from a teaching standpoint, offensive line, are you covered or are you not? Ball's going a certain way. We're stepping that way. You're blocking an area. If there's somebody in your area, get them. Try to just wherever they want to go, take them. From a teaching standpoint, not as necessarily as difficult. It's more about working as a five-man unit. But the other thing is the QB run game. We saw it, 20 years ago with Pat White at West Virginia, and it's sort of exploded since.
Layman terms, two things that you can look for here. You mentioned one, just offensive line moving in unison. The other thing, if you're trying to identify if it's inside zone, look for, and this is just a lot of the running game too, but look for the defender that they're fine leaving unblocked. That defender can do whatever they want to do in this play. Georgia has no regard for that. They've accounted for that because that means Georgia has extra body somewhere else.
Yep, QB footwork. Like you see more often than not, you see the footwork from the quarterback, the open up of the sort of the foot that's closest to the running back coming back, the other foot going forward, weight transfer because of these sort of zone read action traditionally. But the key, and I think you can see it on one of the plays that we have here, is the running back path. And the running back is in essence reading the linebacker and the flow of the linebackers here. And there's different variations of what Georgia does, but this is the core play of what they do. Like just last year in terms of numbers of attempts, rushing attempts, out of the 556 rushing attempts they had, 212 were inside zone. Next closest was counter, which we do in another video in the series at 90. So this is the core of what they do offensively.
Yeah, if you see that, Georgia just ran the ball inside, most often it's going to be this. Though there are variations to where running back could bounce it out and kind of make a lane over here. Not necessarily designed for that, but it does happen.
I'll say it's choice. It's reading flow. It's trusting running back here. And by the way, McIntosh does a great job of just putting his head in there and getting a first down here and going with the push.
That was get to Oregon.
There we saw it out of, sort of more of a spread. This is, you have an inline tight end here, inside zone to the right. The key to watch here is the right guard with Tate Ratledge. So he takes that right step, but he's uncovered. So now he's working up. The linebacker actually completely takes himself almost out of the play. And then he can thus help SVP at center. But he takes that right step first, sees if the backer was flowing to him, he takes the backer. Now he just helps and doubles. And then running back again, taking you'll see it, I think maybe on one of the next few clips, but that first step coming back and then taking the handoff. Whereas, in some of the others we see, an offset action from the back, sort of faking left before they go back right. Here, it's that first step to create the angle, pointing at the guard, and then just reading sort of linebacker flow and finding open holes.
One of my favorite things to watch on these kinds of plays is what do the skill guys on the outside do in here? Because so much of this is focused on what happens at the line of scrimmage and the inside. And here you see Kearis Jackson. He's going to come back a little bit closer to the line, and he wants to get to about this spot before he wants to get here before this guy does and stop there. The other one is Ladd McConkey crosses the formation, says, I do not care about what this man does. He is not my focus. He's going to run with me anyway because I'm Ladd McConkey and I'm a badass. And so he's going to require that attention. But McConkey's trying to get in here and crack a linebacker. So maybe there's some kind of like cutback lane. It's really fascinating to see how they train the receivers. Go find a body and get on them.
Yep. And what's interesting, we see, you mentioned Kearis here. Who is that role in 2023? Because is that something where you see Rosemary Jackson move inside a little bit more so in a slot type role and becomes that guy because he's the physical blocker? Is Dylan Bell maybe that? Because I don't know if you see a lot of Dominic Lovett doing that.
I don't think you want Rob Thomas on the inside either. So
no,
yeah,
I think Dylan Bell, not asking Arian Smith to do that.
I think Dylan Bell may be your guy there. Could be a lot of different options.
Yes.
A lot of different personnel groupings Georgia can have in this kind of play. Next up against Florida.
This is one where, again, a couple of different things with this play. 2, you start out in a pistol look. So, boom, running back behind the QB in the shotgun. You have 12 personnel, so you have 2 tight ends, Darnell and Bowers opposite. Bowers off the line of scrimmage, so he now can, it's a lot easier for him to move across. And what Stetson oftentimes and a lot of times or with these is just counting numbers. We're seeing where it is that he wants to go. And then in something like this where you run split zone, so this is sort of a special part of inside zone with the H-back coming across the formation. We talk about that a lot. We talk a lot about the options that you can do with this in the red zone, but you also kind of want to run this back towards Darnell, because if Darnell does what we know Darnell can do and cave in a line of scrimmage, doesn't necessarily happen here because what McClendon does with his block. But again, you get movement, you get everybody sort of stepping to their left. Boom, everybody working left, and then just taking that guy wherever he wants to go. Good cut by Kenny Mack. I love the pistol part of it because now you're giving QB choice. We can quickly, late into the formation, go left or right, either way. Makes the defense sort of declare in a way. And I think you're actually going to see a lot more pistol from Georgia in 2023 because of, and not necessarily shifting and motion to this, but even just running out of it because of Beck's not quite good as Stetson, not anywhere near as good as Stetson running ability.
The other variations of things that can come out of this, we haven't seen Georgia do much of it, but there has been some. If Bowers is already coming across the formation here, what's to stop a little flick pass forward and see what he can get there? Changes your blocking scheme some, so it's not necessarily inside zone at that point. But if the look is that way for the defense, there may be a wrinkle to get Bowers the ball and get him to the edge here.
And that's just – and oftentimes you see that sort of a split zone read where that instead of Bowers coming across and hitting the backside end, he just keeps going. And we saw that against like Auburn on the goal line that almost gave easy touchdowns because of the attention that Bowers commands if you just keep pushing him through. When Cincinnati had the big touchdown in the Peach Bowl game a long time ago, same action, read that guy, don't block that guy. And where you get the flow from the line of scrimmage, all that flow left allows an easy sort of cutback lane in that type of what ideally is what you get.
Well, when we would say that Stetson knows what everyone's doing and what their assignments are, that's what we mean. Because when you have to read that much in such a short amount of time, like that's a master at quarterback that can do that. And, Georgia's level of quarterback will determine what the offense is capable of doing in terms of those reads.
Yep.
Mississippi State.
This is the one where you can see big time. One, a lot of this is kind of what, we talk about what Mississippi State does and how they confuse defense, Georgia's defense specifically a little bit, and they maybe don't necessarily run the ball as well. They do a lot of slanting and angling. Now, what's interesting is oftentimes you see defenses that will slant or angle away from the back. So here they would have gone to the defense's right, the offense's left, but this time they slanted to the back, and it basically created a touchdown because Georgia blocked it well. But the other thing that is great to see here is Milton's footwork. That initial step back and then moving forward, it allows him to take that path right at the guard to where that now you can easily read the inside backer and make a cut off of it to where you stay on this. In this instance, you stay play side, and they had everybody up the line of scrimmage. This was late in the game, right? When he scored, I think very late in the game. So everybody's at the line of scrimmage, or if you see flow to the outside, it allows that cutback. But here you see the footwork more so than I think any other of the angles that we had.
And again, so much is reading defense. You say everyone's at the line of scrimmage. I mean, look how close this is here.
Yeah, and this is late in the game.
It's late in the game. It happens, but that just means one cut from efficient blocking, and it could go a long way.
And you see Bauer sort of sprinting out. You leave an unblocked defender. There's so many variations, and so much of what offense in today's football is done is built off of this singular play, RPOs, play action, all of it. Now here is obviously the coup de grace in a way when the QB keeps the ball. And the beautiful part, and this is, Rich Rod, when they sort of made this into the popular world that it was.
Hey, that's 2 West Virginia references in this video. We're going to have to slow it down, buddy.
That is true. But look how many players actually have to be. There are 11 defenders on the field. They only have to actually block 2. And that is Broderick's block and then A.D. Mitchell's block on the corner. Everybody else, the action and the flow, and then the QB making the correct read. Now, I think this one was more of a design run more than a read. But like all their linebackers, and we talked about this when we looked at this, just flow. Don't even have to be touched. Like 47, then Stetson was in the end zone when he finally figured out, the running back didn't have the ball. But with TCU's alignment, it made reading that guy very easy. But again, this is the core of what they do. And when you look at explosive play rate in 2021, that it was a little down there in terms of inside zone explosive play rate. 2022, second most explosive plays in the running game out of inside zone, or in essence, keeping it on an inside zone read.
If there's a worry that I have for Georgia's offense in 2023 is that they don't have the even ability to fake as many of the quarterback runs. Beck is not immobile, but he's not Stetson mobile. And if Vandegrift becomes a quarterback, you have a different calculus there. But can Vandegrift do all the things that Beck can?
It's the great question, because you know what? By the way, the most explosive run play for Georgia in 2022, QB draw, in terms of on a percentage basis.
It's only because Cass Jones only had 2 carries. That's all I'm saying. This has been a Football 101 from Film Don't Lie Inside Zone episode. Many others on the run game and some other concepts that we'll throw on the YouTube channel as well. Make sure you subscribe. That's Brent Rollins. I'm Dayne Young. We'll see